Hi, this is Gideon Six, and welcome to Decoding Deviations. Today's guest is Dr. Fatima Imam. She is a historian and now poet who writes prolifically on Medium. All of her writing can be found there. She can also be found on LinkedIn. We discussed history, growing up in India, family history, social media, and a lot more. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
I would say that my actually it is my family history itself, which was like very rooted in history. We have been living in the rural, so Lucknow is where my father worked actually, but we grew up. I mean, our ancestral homes are in the rural parts, which is like I would say 100 miles east uh, of Lucknow. Have you heard of the city Varanasi, Benares?
I have not, no.
That's the holiest city in India, or it's also known by its historical name, Kashi. So actually, my ancestral home, paternal ancestral home, is near Varanasi or Sarna. That is the. So see, I grew up in all the cradles of religious foundations. So Sarnath is where Buddha got his what do you call it, enlightenment. Varanasi is the holiest place of Hinduism. So it's all you can say it's all I'm rooted in history.
So
So
immediately from the start, you're just like exposed to like an incredible amount of history. So
right,
it kind of seemed like a natural course for you.
natural course. And then of course my I mean, and that was, I would say, the safest and uh, you can say profession to go into, because the family couldn't, because I was interested, so nobody was any questioning what will you do with that, because it's part of, oh, I'm looking at the sources. And the languages also, my mother was actually more fluent in different Indian languages more than me. So that also helped me to maybe look at the sources more critically rather than just basing myself on the translations, let's say. Yeah.
Nice. Is there like any particular time period and location that you're like most interested as a historian?
Oh, I would call myself as a 18th century
Hmm.
historian. That's what I did on my PhD. But my expertise lies because I've been teaching a lot of Indian history from like the whole, all 5,000 years. But my PhD dissertation was from 18th century. It's a North Indian state. Again, another one, Jaipur, and that's where I did my PhD.
And what was it about the time period that kind of like was most attractive to you?
Uh, Not today's. Anything before 1957, I'd say.
Oh, I
Any,
just meant like you know, the 18th century was like more of your point of interest. Were there events happening during that time period that made you particularly interested in the 18th century? Was it just the family connection to the area?
yeah, so 18th century will be the period where my family also got like started living in these rural areas where like first they were working as, you know, that Imam, just to give you a reference. Imam is an, it means teacher, leader of prayer. So it's like a very lucid term or a blanket term used for scholars, people who are can be employed or have been employed apart from, of course, leading the prayers, which is the exact translation in any kind of educational I would say, purposes, like judges or tutors or scholars writing books, translating books for the rulers, right?
Right.
18th century, or I would say beginning of the 19th century, where they will be going to these rural parts of my ancestral homes and living there, leaving the big cities like Lucknow, like Delhi, because the situation was not, as you know, that was the time when India was being colonized by the British. So basically, because I have read about that period more, it became interesting. But if I have to pick up a favorite period of mine, it will be under the rulers. Like one of my favorite rulers, one was in the 2nd century BC. His name was Ashoka, who brought in this institution, or you can say um, ideology, that all his subjects are like his. He is the parent to all his subjects. They are all equal, irrespective of their religion, languages, cultures. He was the first one in India, or as documented, who opened hospitals for the animals. So that would be my favorite period. And then jumping back right to the 16th century will be Akbar. He's the one who actually instituted philosophy, as far as his policies are concerned, that all his subjects will be treated equally. That is, there will be universal peace in his kingdom. People will not fight, especially on the basis of religion or sex, all those things. So these are my two favorite periods. If I have to ever go back, I will live under these two kings.
Yeah, and it seemed like it would be wise because they kind of embraced humanity as a entire group as opposed to just
Yeah,
having one strict ideology or theology.
yeah.
Um, so I imagine that kind of greatly expanded the knowledge and capabilities of the whole country.
Absolutely, especially the languages. In so what they were doing, that they, for example, if you go to 2nd century BC Ashoka, some of the languages are practically dead. So his inscriptions, or inscriptions, were written in 4 to 5 languages. So, and that's why the script was deciphered. So whatever people could understand, and you understand that these inscriptions, just like the Roman inscriptions, because common people did not were not literate. So that was kind of a propaganda, a kind of a news, you can say news bulletin. So all the things which the king wanted them to know were instructed or written down on those inscriptions. So he took care that he's not only using the official language, but also the language of, let's say, which was popular in those areas. And sometimes they even carried 4 types of languages. So multilingualism, which is very necessary, I think, even today, was also very much practiced or promoted by both of these leaders.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I would agree. Being diverse, not just culturally, but also linguistically, um, I think helps bridge divides and misunderstandings between cultures.
Exactly. And also, I would say why I became a historian, and why I'm so skeptical of any of this, the universalism or universal truth. Oh, that culture is that, and that person is that. Because if you go back to history, nobody is black and white. There are so much of gray area in between, right? And we have to put into context.
Right.
For example, it's not like Ashoka was an angel or an emperor. It was his very well thought of policy, because first he went on a very violent campaign and or you can say united major parts of India, the Indian subcontinent, you say, which also from today's perspective also includes countries like Afghanistan, countries like Nepal. So he had a multilingual, multi-religious empire already, right? He couldn't have ruled with an iron fist or using one language or one religion, let's say. So that was the way to go to prolong his legacy, right?
Yeah.
Same thing can be said about the second person. So it's not that we can just copy and paste something from the past into the present. They can be just as examples, right?
Right.
So history is all about, looking into the gray areas, not being so absolute that that's what our culture belongs to and that's what our culture does. And, versus you versus them, or, us versus them, that kind of thing.
To me, there really seems to be a drive for everybody to agree on definite terms, which I find interesting because it doesn't that hasn't been the case historically, right? Um,
Exactly.
and do you see dangers in just having the one mind concept that, you know, like especially on different social media platforms,
Mhm.
it's one opinion or the other,
Yeah.
and it's, you would imagine with more options there would be more chaos, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
Right. Never ever. As long as you give me a platform to speak and you ask questions, like we are given the opportunity to express ourselves
Right.
freely, not in a violent way, right? As we say, and it doesn't, for example, you and I can disagree on something. You like your a poetry book, by the way, I just ordered it on Amazon.
Oh, thank you.
So if you write something about it and I might disagree with that, your
Right.
particular point of view, but that doesn't make us enemies. We
Right.
can still be friends, or we can be still be cordial to each other. Even in families we differ.
Yes.
But now what I have seen is, and as we are progressing, modern human beings are becoming more intolerant, more insecure, uh, which is, I don't know, I don't understand that. It's just like I feel out of place in saying, for example, as a teacher, because as I told you, I've been teaching. I have not taught in India. I think as a graduate student, I did taught when I was a graduate student. You know how you get some classes because of the scholarship.
Oh, yes.
But my real teaching has always been outside India. First, I lived in Saudi Arabia. Did I mention that? Yeah.
And where is
Yeah, so
Siberia?
that was my first experience out of India, Saudi Arabia, and I taught in a
Oh,
high
South
school,
Arabia. Okay.
Jeddah, which is it's one of their, it's not the capital, but one of the largest cities in Saudi Arabia. Anyways, I was there teaching high school students about Indian history, and basically majority of them I would not, and some Arab students as well, and where I defended. So I've been defending somewhere, like, so there I was defending Jainism, Hinduism, whatever historical sources. When I came to Canada, it depends which religious tradition, because students are curious. Because if you're explaining something, it cannot be just good and bad. So if you don't like me, my face, my being brown, that means everything what brown people have done is cannot be bad, right? So you have to get to a common ground, and so I just feel very out of place in that way, that I'm very critical about if something happened, especially historically. And it's okay if something was messed up, like my family. I was a great critic of my father, how conservative he was. It doesn't mean he was my father, so he was perfect. And so I mean, that's what an environment we should be living in, where we have a big enough heart to sit down and listen to the bad things we have done to people, or how bad we are and how we can improve ourselves.
Right. And I think that there's an unwillingness to learn from people we disagree with or don't
Absolutely.
like. So if there's like a leader in history who has a bad reputation, it's like nobody wants to hear anything about it.
Right.
But I think they're missing a lot of opportunities to learn
Yeah.
from that.
And especially in this connected world where the young people, I'm really worried about them, that they are on social media, let's say, everyone today is, right? And there's everything is there. So how can you be narrow-minded? Because there's so much to learn, right?
Yeah.
Especially, I would say, the streaming services have made all the materials, at least the movies, documentaries, you can say, available so cheaply. I think most of the time freely. So you can just learn about anything. And then you'll get to see the similarities, like, for example, patriotism, culture, religion. It's like all become more interesting, in my opinion.
Right. Because what is patriotism in a connected world? Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
what does that look like
Right.
exactly? It's hard to define. Um, and you try to avoid the pull toward the one because everybody wants the one, but with so many connections, it seems like there's a missed opportunity to have the more than one. Like you can believe multiple things and
Yeah,
not be scared of that, right?
right. And people look at me because I've been again when I was in Canada, like of course, with my color of my skin, being a woman, but it doesn't determine because if I am afraid, I'm scared of speaking my mind, then how will people know me, right?
Right.
So have been in very awkward position. I've been still asked in Canada after 26 years, where are you from? Where is your home for you? I'm still asked that question, but I don't mind,
Yeah.
right? Because it's okay. I mean, I'll explain that this is what is home for me. I chose uh, very deliberately to come to Canada and settle down here. When I was in US, Lake Forest is one of the, lack of diversity, I would say. My college had like international students, but I was one of the only female brown teachers teaching about India and Islam. They gave me courses. And there were many occasions where I would say it was a teaching moment for them and for me. Oh, so this is what the image is, and I'm trying to break it. So naturally, there will be a reaction,
Right.
right?
And I think the intention matters,
Mm-hmm.
why are you asking the question,
Exactly.
but what was it about Canada that was like you made it feel, were they just more tolerant of new ideas for you? Like what made you settle on like Canada, Toronto?
Canada is mostly because I did my PhD from here, so 10 years.
Hmm.
It was a very busy period for me. I had two young kids, so really most of it I don't even remember. But overall, because there are so many immigrants here, that most of the time it's great. It's not uh, the atmosphere is, and I think I also blend in, right? I don't wear my either Indian ethnic identity on my face, on my dress. So yeah, it has been great. And I take it in my stride. I do get hurt, of course, but it's the life I chose. People are curious, right?
Yeah, they're curious. And that's I think that's acceptable. Um, I know it feels like when you look at the number of times someone might engage with your post versus how many people actually comment, it seems like a lot of people are afraid of asking questions because
Mm-hmm.
of the extreme negativity they experience, like the fear of being ignorant or being called ignorant
Right.
or worse.
Yeah.
Um, just because you don't understand something. So um, you know, I guess it's important to try to be patient with people if they ask an annoying question.
Exactly. It's not like take to offense because at least I'm clarifying one doubt in somebody's mind, right?
Hmm.
So they won't be asking the same questions again. And being a teacher also helped me a lot, right? When I was teaching at UFT, uh, it had so many students from all backgrounds, everywhere, and that I did in Lake Forest also. Now I'm because I didn't get the tenure in Lake Forest, so now I'm not in academia anymore. I'm still teaching, but it's more about one-to-one and ESL, preparing students. So it's a little bit different, but I'm doing the same thing.
Right. And so what kind of led you to writing from being well, I know historians do a lot of writing as it is.
Mhm.
Was it did it just feel like the next natural step for you?
That's why because I forget the books. So this is the Bible for me, as you can see, Seth Rogen, The Practice.
Hmm.
He has written other books, but shipping creative work. So so first of all, as you know, that as a research scholar, I've been writing a lot, but it was always about, of course, lesson planning, research, but creative writing is, I think it has been 15, if I'm not mistaken, in early 2000, I got hold of um, Julia Cameron's morning pages, right? When you write something by hand, the artist way, I don't know whether. So I've got the book so that I don't forget.
Oh,
So
no
I have
problem.
been writing morning pages. This is the artist way, Julia Cameron. It's a 1994 book, if I'm not mistaken. She's the one who's saying in order to be creative, because we are all blocked, right? We are not good enough. We don't have time. We don't have money to write what or to paint the way we like to. So she suggested that as soon as a person gets up, we should be writing handwritten pages, whatever comes to our mind. It can be
Hmm.
anything, not thinking about editing and just forget about that by hand. So, and I usually write by hand. So I've been doing that, but I was never confident enough to publish anything. And then, during COVID, when I had more time, I started reading Medium. I think Obama got me there, yeah, other people. So I started, first of all, I read a lot on Medium. I think I had around 200 or 300 followers just by reading, being an
Right.
active reading member. And then I think in October, I got this book, Practice. And every other page that Seth Godin is saying, okay, if you are creative, then ship it, publish it. Now, how will we know that you are creative?
Right.
And frankly, this gave me some confidence to write. And then again, just the encouragement on Medium got me going.
And so you've been on Medium for a few years now. How long have you been on Medium?
2 years, yes,
2 years.
exactly. I mean,
So what?
writing on Medium in 2 years.
Okay.
November 2020, and yeah, exactly 2 years.
So how did it feel when you finally kind of, that first publication? Like, how did that feel for you? How did that go?
Very, yeah, liberating, I would say. And the comments, the first comment, that person is not on Medium anymore. I still remember the comment, my first comment from my first poem, which was about knowledge. So that was, I still remember. And that gave me just the motivation to keep going.
Right.
My mother was a poet, but she died before I started writing. She couldn't even think that I could ever write poetry. Writing, like, lesson planning or doing research and writing something, that I have been doing. They knew, but none of my family members will ever believe that I can write poetry. It not might not be that good, but just, putting words
Right.
into some kind of rhythm, it's different topics, is really excites me.
Yeah, it's exciting when it connects with someone. Um, you know,
Absolutely.
it,
Yeah.
it brings a certain energy to it, and you're like, it's exciting. Um, it was kind of similar for me. I didn't publish anything until I was in my late 30s because I was so nervous about what are people going to think, and
Uh-huh.
people
Yeah.
don't know me this way. And
Right.
you really kind of expose yourself through your writing, like whether you
Mm-hmm.
want to intentionally or not. The words you put on for the world, they're going to interpret it in a lot of ways that you didn't expect and you might disagree with, but they're like, hey, you wrote this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has that been the experience for you?
Absolutely. I just, people have taught, I mean, now, so after this, I have started reading self-help books. You can say how to be more creative. There's a full bookshelf full of that, because mine have been reversed, because I was already, people are talking about how to have a routine, how to be creative, how to be productive. But I have been that person from the very beginning. It's just not getting the tenure got that break. Oh, so what should I do now? I don't have that. The life which I had for myself is gone, right? Uh, and so yes, so teaching I continued, but that structured life. Um, and then when I, like, with this, I said, yeah, if somebody, like, let me just put something on the paper, not the morning pages, but something which can be rhymed or can be edited, can be typed. So even typing my own words gave me so much joy, I cannot even tell you. When that handwritten, whatever is in my mind, and it comes on paper or on computer screen, it just looked fabulous.
So do
Uh,
you have a certain process that you go through, or do you kind of just like you said with the first book that you just write whatever comes to your mind, or do you write intentionally on
mhm.
occasion?
All the above. That means I for poetry, sometimes it's just the word which gets me going, or somebody, an emotion which I had, a
Hmm.
conversation with someone. So I've written a lot. I was checking just to, because categorizing your poems is also a huge thing. It's that I've written around 900 poems, so I don't know what
Wow.
I've written, but
Yeah.
just to speak with you, I was saying, okay, let me just see what I've been writing more about.
Right.
And it's more about life, like how to get over something, how to get over your past. Two things which I think I've come again and again in my poetry and poem will be like how to let go of the past. It can be bad memories, especially how to get over it, and what did I do if somebody has said something, like the way I'm leading my life, and if somebody criticizes, how I get over it. And also thinking about life after, when you die, what will happen. So that imagination just fascinates me, which I have never even imagined. Again, coming from we already know what's going to happen to our lives. So now I'm questioning that. So just to get back to you, what is the creative process? It's sometimes I do write intentionally. That means if there have been 2 days, and I don't publish daily, let's say. So if there has been 2 days where I've not posted anything on Medium, I will just sit on the table and say, okay, today I should do something.
Mhm.
As far as my, and I also reply back to lots of prompts as well in the different Medium publications, the poetry prompts, like Lifeline, paper poetry. So it's gets me going. Okay, I'm replying that. And then I have a cat which provides me any kind of inspiration, any kind of accident or incident happens with him, that becomes a story. People like that. I have done a series of alphabetical short stories, which were totally fictional, which is totally, that I'm a historian, so nothing is fiction for me, right? Everything
Right.
has to be source, everything has to have some kind of foundation. So the creative process is, can I write the whole story using just as noun? So all the people in the story will have the names with a. I like to use as many adjectives, as many nouns, as many verbs from this alphabet. And can I do that? So that kind of experiment. Abecedarian poems, like can I just write as like Chinese? I think I just finished Chinese New Year, which is tomorrow. Can I do all the A to Z about them, just describing that?
Yeah. So it's like mental gymnastics when you do these challenges.
Yeah,
Kind of helps sharpen you up a little bit, especially if you're like in you kind of have like a writer's block period. Um,
especially, yes, yeah.
when
But
you're
I
working,
wouldn't say that anything I would like to take any class. I mean, anything which has been buried, and that's what, if anybody is listening to this podcast, all of us are writers, all of us are painters. If you see at the back, this is me, just in
really?
after COVID. I have
Yeah.
never ever picked up a brush. My kids, my son he draws very well. His cartoons are really, I can be using them in my books. My daughter is very creative. I'm the most non-creative person I have ever came across. But if we just let ourselves, free, be confident, all of us have an artist hidden, and it is apart, very different from what we do in our 9 to 5 jobs. We have something else parallel to it, and that's what I try to say. That nobody is. I would have said the same thing just before reading this book, that I'm not a poet. I cannot never ever publish anything, especially publicly like this, because
Yeah.
anybody can come and comment, or just object to anything. But if my experience, because so I'm just 992 poems and stories on Medium, without any effort, in the sense that I still have my job, I still do everything what I've been doing before 2020. this
Well, the
this just
painting's
comes up so
amazing.
easily, yeah.
Like it looks great.
No, but it's great. I think most of us, anybody can, if they want to, for example, learning a musical instrument. I mean,
Mhm.
that's what I think your podcast will be, right? What makes us creative? We are already creative. We are just making somebody else very rich because of our hard work, don't we?
Right.
Like the work we have been doing.
That's kind of how I feel when
Families
I
we have, yeah.
sorry. That's
No.
kind of feel how I feel when I consume or overconsume television or
Mhm.
whatever it may be. I'm like, well, there's so much that we could be doing ourselves instead of consuming other creations,
Yeah.
which sometimes are really great, but I think we lose focus on our own abilities
Mhm.
and maybe hidden abilities.
Hidden. Yeah. And TV, you give such a fantastic example. I am deliberately, because I, again, when I, from, and there have been other family issues, whatever. I don't want to talk about. I only
No
want to
problem.
talk about positive things. Reading has always been my passion, so I read a lot. But reading or doing something more consciously, because if I'm depressed, Netflix. If I'm depressed, Amazon. Now I'm consciously cutting out the scrolling part. Oh, what I should watch, and then we spend what 15-20 minutes just deciding what we are going to watch tonight or on
Yeah,
Friday. That is and then people say, oh, I am working, when do I have, that is the time we can take it up, right, for our creative passions. I didn't have that time, and if you would have asked me the same question, first of all, you wouldn't have done a podcast with me, because there was nothing for me to show to you.
right,
It has been just working. I'm working. I raised two kids. Now they're, but everything is going, but that's, every individual does that. There's nothing very extraordinary about it. But I don't have any talents. I can paint, I can sing, I cannot write, whatever, because I didn't have time. I have been working 2-3 jobs all my life, raising up two kids and one mother. So it has been a very hard life for me, and I really didn't have time. All of a sudden, where do I get time? Because I, during the COVID, I work more now because I don't travel. I'm working online, so
hmm
I'm picking up more hours. So this creative work which you see at the back, my whole house is full of painting, is because I consciously don't scroll Netflix or Amazon. I decide after, whatever, that this 2 hours I will be just opening that and closing it. No social media. Uh, and that is the time I'm getting to do my creative thing.
right. So, when you're creating a poem or maybe even a piece of art, do you let it sit for a while, or you kind of just you type it out and you put it out into the world?
Very good. For me, it has to be instantly, like within 5 minutes, or it doesn't happen.
Really?
Yeah. Then I can go back, but something just pushes me. It's the word which is, uh, like, for example, the poem which is just today, it was nothingness. I don't know how this word, I don't know. Nothingness, right? I've never written anything about this. What does it mean? It can be when we die, what happens to us? We become part of the truth, or we are basically nothing, right? And I try to avoid something which might be, very narrow my meaning, rather than um, more elaborate. So I thought nothingness. What can I say? And this word let me. Uh, this poem was written, I think, yesterday, before yesterday, which today it was published in Lark. I think I would go into nothingness. So just to give you an idea that, yeah, it has to happen very, very quickly, very, very quickly, in the sense that my ideas have to be put on paper, on computer, on a painting, and then I just go back and just make it whatever it is.
Tidy it up.
Otherwise, it's not happening. No.
So, did you? I didn't want to put you on the spot. Did you want to share one of your poems? Maybe talk about one
Yeah,
of
of
them?
course. No, I'll be happy to.
Okay.
Actually, this one, I think you might, I don't know whether you like it or not, but this one is just as I was giving you example. So this word nothingness, what do we become after we die, or what happens to us? So fantasy. Where would I prefer to stay
Uh,
if I
you want me
have?
to put it up on the screen too?
Oh, yeah, yeah, sure, 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 sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Let me go back to our medium where it is. Just a minute. I'll share the screen. Just, oh, you started. Oh, yeah, you can do that. Okay, that's fine.
So we're on Medium. This was published in the Lark.
No, no, yeah.
Okay.
This one, yeah. So do you want me to read it
Yeah,
or?
please.
So where would I prefer to stay? In my childhood home or where I spend the happiest moments, just like Toronto, for example? In the homes of the rich and famous or rent a simple abode? Where would I build the house of my dreams, one brick at a time? What would I do if I had the free time and no responsibilities? Would I be bored to death and return to purgatory, or unfinished and paintings will be books and paintings be completed? Or would I live the same life as before to feel alive? Where would I go if I had the freedom to travel anywhere? Would I travel to my favorite destinations or explore new ones? The buried cities will be visited or the brand new ones? Would I travel alone or with like minded friends? What would I do if everything was free of cost? The luxurious brands to fill up my empty spaces, unlimited supply of organic foods and desserts, or share my resources with everyone? No simple answers are available. No concrete plans are scheduled. I would like to fulfill all my dreams in this life so that I can mingle into nothingness forever.
Wonderful. Thank you. So
Thank
it
you.
gives the reader a lot to consider. Um,
Right, because we think that, we are going somewhere, so we are always in a hurry, never live in the moment, right?
right.
We want to go to the house of somebody rich and famous. We go and maybe I have done in that person's house is so big and so rich. But actually, if we had that opportunity, especially again, what would we do? Nobody knows. So it's better that we have this, like today, the podcast with you is what's happening, right?
Right.
We don't know anything about after that. So why not live and fulfill whatever we can do and then just retire, just be into nothingness.
Well, they're important questions because I think in the normal course of a day or even a week, you just fall into a repetition. And if you're not
Mm-hmm.
careful, you're not living your life anymore because you're not confronting yourself. You're not thinking about how you're impacting yourself, your family, your community.
Yeah. And also this the kind of weekend thing, because my I always have arguments with my both my children. What are you doing on the weekend? Today's Thursday, or today's Friday, though that's okay. Why are we always planning? I'm not saying that planning is not good, but first we should live, and then we can the last part of a day could be about the planning. Or I will do that. So this is next time I come for dinner. So whenever, so my daughter will always say, next time I come for dinner, you should make that. But what about the dinner we are having? Did you enjoy it? Oh yes, I did. So, okay, so let's concentrate first on this, because maybe this is the last meal I
Right.
am preparing for you, right? Or the last Christmas dinner, for example.
It's
But we are
kind of a
always saying,
terrifying
okay,
thought.
this is, yeah, future. But future and and I think that's another thing is about creative people, is that that urgency, that you have to do it, otherwise that idea is going to just fly away and lost forever. So it has to be now, 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 not like to be postponed.
No, there's been plenty of times where I've had a brilliant idea and was too lazy to write it down. And
Mhm.
then a day or two later, I'm straining my mind, wishing I could go back and capture that. But it's gone.
It's gone. Yeah, it just comes, or a thing which is troubling you, like for example you were upset, and if you write it down or just try to express it in a more creative way, it goes away. The impact goes away. The intensity lessens as soon as we write it on paper. Like I'm very hurt at Gideon. He said something he shouldn't have said. I'm so mad at him. But when I'm writing that, it looks so crazy. No, like the justification of Gideon's actions will come right at you. They'll jump at you as soon as you give it a thought, rather than just being stuck up or fixed on this, that I am mad or I'm upset or this thing was bad. And it can be painting. I mean, if since your podcast talk about everything, it's just not poetry, writing, it could be anything. just not the job or identity which the world has given to us, that we are this.
Yeah, it's too complex to be immediately reactive, rather than giving something thought and thinking about it and considering alternatives. Um, you know, in going forward in the poem, the last two lines are really interesting. I would like to fulfill all my dreams in this life, and everybody I think would mostly agree with that. Um, but if you only read it at face value, it doesn't mean anything. You have to really consider, well, what does that mean to you? What are your dreams?
Mhm.
What actions are you taking for your dreams? How do your
Yeah,
dreams impact others?
yeah.
Um, so that I can mingle into nothingness forever. Uh, is there a certain message you wanted to imply with that line?
Absolutely. So if somebody just read the first line, like
Mhm.
fantasy, if I ever come back, some like the subtitle and the last line. So this is conceptualized that, oh, if I had given, this is a fantasy of mine, that what if I come back to this world? It is not even implied that I have taken a rebirth or I'm just coming as a ghost. I could be a ghost and living in whose like a house. Anyways, back in Lake Forest, that was one of my happiest memories. So I can live all my life for eternity in my house, which I spend my happiest memories, right?
Right,
So the message which I would say, that it's rather think this is a fantasy, that, oh, if I come back or not. I would rather do fulfill the dreams which I have is with like explore everywhere. I will have lots of money. Everything will be free. All those are fantasies. The thing is that I will like to whatever I can do. I'll fulfill my dreams in this life, and then after that, I'm done forever. I'm not no fantasies after that.
right. It kind of takes away the idea that, I'll get to something later. I'll do
Hmm.
it later. You really need to consider doing it now, because later may not be available to you.
Yeah. And it could be both in our this life as well, right? And
Right,
also after, we don't know. And I also wanted to tell you, Gideon, that this idea about nothingness, about uh, living in the moment, it all has started because, again, I told you I have a very successful, or I would not successful in the sense, very fixed timeline. Get married, have children, have a career, then just your life is all set,
right,
everything. So nobody ever questioned. I was following that to the T. No, everything was followed. And when your best laid intentions, they don't work out, and it's not like blaming somebody. That's what life is, right?
right.
And I think and I never thought that I will be talking about this one, because again, I don't talk about religion. It just makes me very uncomfortable, or any spiritual practice. But then I am talking as I was looking back to my poems all the time. But it's more about, this life, and there is nothing beyond. Because I think most of the time, this is the first time I was questioned about my choices, about my future, what will I do, how I'm like, nobody believes that I'm more happy than I was ever. Uh, so maybe because of that is my poetry is maybe giving me a kind of a outlet for that, that through my words I am explaining to myself that, no, you have, like, I'm happy, and because this is what it is. It's
Well,
bad, it's
uh,
there. If it's good, it's there. That's it.
it really is a conversation with yourself over time, and you can see how, over time, especially with a generous amount of work published, you can really say, oh man, at that time, that's who I was, that's what I was
Hmm.
feeling. And you can see your growth or even regression, or just maybe you're on a completely different wavelength.
Yeah,
But if you don't write this stuff down, you won't be able to do the exploration.
exactly. So I'm basically answering, so because mostly people I've met in my life are very kind. So, and I just keep away from the toxic one. That's another life lesson. Uh, but it's basically these poems, especially about life, is me myself, like saying to consoling that Fatima who was on that tenure track, always very like, okay, this is what my life would look like. And it failed so miserably. Failed in the sense it's not on the same track, let's say. It's not, I wouldn't call it a failure, but in that sense, right? All my friends, they didn't, like, I've lost them. We are not in touch because what would we talk about, right? Because
Yeah.
our lifestyles and everything, even the routines have changed so much. I have no conversation where I can contribute. There've been so many changes. So, and thank God for poetry that I am having a conversation with myself. And
Do you,
maybe somebody can get, yeah, if somebody just feels like that, they can feel happy and be unstuck in their life, because there is a parallel life which you can lead and be passionate about, be happy about, or create a new identity,
yeah.
right? If somebody is one identity did not work or one career did not work, there is something underneath which will take us to another track.
And
Always.
it usually requires introspection and creativity. Um,
Those are hard questions because there are no courses for that, right? If you take a writing course with Gideon and I will be a published author, it doesn't work like that,
no,
right?
right.
Alternative, even like for the careers we built up for ourselves, we take so many hours, right? So many years, I would say, not hours. And still we have to work every day of our life to be that person. Then how can we say that if we want to have another career or another identity, we don't have to work hard? It's very hard,
Yeah.
scary, but now I have a very, like, even with students, that, oh, I cannot write this paper, or this, I said, no, no, you will write. You can do that. That confidence I didn't have before, because before I was just giving them instructions, never had on the other side that they were coming up with their questions. But now I help them out from writing the essay and then presenting, doing their, it can be anything, they're like their work presentations, the interview, and that confidence, because now I can speak to that no, it is possible. Language is not a barrier. You just practice more. English is not your first language, so be it.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Do you feel it's more like even though you're teaching before, do you feel like, do you prefer working in a smaller group, like maybe one-on-one, where you have the opportunity to learn about the individual and it's
Mhm.
more, I imagine it's more like consulting than teaching.
Consulting, yeah, yeah. Tutoring, you can, like the different words I apply. Mentoring.
Yes. Yeah.
My old students come back to me, like, for example, one was, it was the job interview, and then the mentoring is that you can do that. And I think these 2 years have helped me, because before that I was consuming information for my courses, convincing my students just in an argument, right? Checking their papers, whatever, taught them what this means, right? And then got busy in other courses. But now it's something very different. It's just telling them this is the topic, or they give me a topic, they have no idea, and I come with the confidence, not in myself, within them, that if I can do that, if I can write something meaningful, let's say, if I, at least to me, it's meaningful, they can do the same thing. So I would say I'm becoming a better teacher in that sense. So again, maybe I'm not like my poems don't get viral or whatever the success criteria is. I would say I'm a better teacher and a better mentor because of my creativity.
That's awesome. And is Medium kind of like your focal point for writing, or do you publish anywhere else?
I was thinking about, I'm so bad at in computer stuff. I was thinking of self-publishing on Amazon.
Hmm.
Like I can. So first, my goal was 1,000 poems. So I'm still short of, like, let's say 8 or 9, and then I think I should categorize them and
Yeah, it's definitely different once you put it all together and see it as a collection of work.
right, yeah. So
Or
that's my next step is definitely. And then on Medium, people just give like good suggestions. So my cat stories, which are also like funny in the sense,
yeah,
but they're not fictionalized. They're mostly true. I just exaggerate a little bit. Somebody suggested, why don't you turn them into children's book? Because
Right.
that will be funny. And both my children, as I told you, they are great actors. My son can do like 10, 15 accents, different things. He can illustrate. So yeah, so there are different ideas, but again, it conflicts with my,
Yeah,
job I have to
it all
do.
requires sacrifice of time.
Right.
Yeah.
But then again, whenever this other thing, which if someone is listening to this, is if our, because we are always very overwhelmed, especially younger people, because I was that person too when I was young, is there's so many things we have to do. Our schedules are always overbooked. Just delete things, edit things. We cannot, because our creativity dies a natural death if we are not given enough time. So if there is if there is a choice between like me publishing and putting a poem or two every other day, I will continue to do poem a day rather than just disappearing from medium and uh, publishing. If it can be done simultaneously, then of course, why not? But because there is something inside my mind which has to be written and which is helping me in other areas as well. So I'll rather continue that.
Active writing is just it's very beneficial for your spirit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I agree. Well, I mean, we're almost at here for an hour. So
It was wonderful.
I really enjoyed it. I want to thank you again for joining me, and I'll be sure to share your work as much as possible. And if you
Oh,
ever
thank you so
decide
much.
to publish, please let me know. I'll be happy to
Absolutely.
read that and share that as well.
Yeah, yeah, I will. I will whenever, as I told you, but it was wonderful. And I'm just excited that if somebody listened to this podcast, they can get some inspiration because we need everybody's thoughts on paper and has to be shared. Not the toxic ones, but the positive ones.
Well, and honest thoughts,
Honest, yeah, yeah.
you know, not just the same regurgitated information from these AI blogs, genuine thoughts, because that's the
Gen
only way you're going to be able to grow as a person yourself is to be honest.
Right. And we are not, so we are not at competition with each other because I can never be as good as you and like, it will be different, right? I'm not
Right.
trying to be another Gideon. I'm trying to be, or any other celebrity or influencer anybody wants to, because of both are, we are different individuals and both voices have to be on Medium, yours and mine. And there's enough space for everybody, right?
There's
But
plenty.
we go
Yeah.
like, for example, therapists, what do they tell us? They said, what are you thinking? So we just go there, say our bit, but we don't get anything out of it because we don't write it, we don't give them the context of it. But if we are writing and creating something which we really want to do, most of the toxic, I've used to be a very depressed and negative person because I thought everything is just falling apart for me. It's just as the sky is falling down on me all the time. And I don't know where this feeling got. I mean, so far I've not given a penny to a therapist, but it has been these, stupid things which I've been doing. And by the way, pandemic, I was all alone. I live alone, but at that time, like all the socializing, we couldn't.
Right.
Um, yeah, and I think I thrived. So it is, everybody has, they can just pick up paper, they can paint, and they can just, and it doesn't have to be good. Who cares?
Yeah, it's just an expression of what you're feeling.
Right? Because nobody is going to give you honest opinion. Yeah, if you're just, and for that, in order to make money, yeah, you can do whatever job you want to support your family. But being creative is a totally different way to live, and we should allow ourselves, I would say, to do that,
I agree.
irrespective of having no time. Yeah,
Definitely. Well,
yeah,
thank
that's
you
what.
again, Dr.
Thank you
Fatima.
so much.
I hope
Thank
you have
you.
a blessed rest of the day, and
You
we'll talk again,
too. Have
okay?
a nice weekend.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye.
Bye.